Hello and welcome to Neuroshambles, the podcast that aims to shine a light into some of the murkier corners of what it's like to parent neurodivergent kids. I'm Mark Allen, and every episode I'm going to be swapping stories with my guests about some of the frankly ludicrous nonsense we have to deal with on a daily basis. So, if you're anything like me and you're feeling frazzled, overwhelmed and pretty much an outcast from polite society, join me. Hello and welcome to episode 35 of Neuroshambles. Thanks for joining once again, Neuroshamblers, and as always, for your lovely comments in response to the previous episode. Just a quick public service announcement to let you know that I'm going to be taking a couple of weeks off Neuroshambles while I navigate the choppy waters of the Easter holidays with my lot, but rest assured I will be back with a new episode at the end of April once I've managed to catch my breath a bit, so just bear with me until then if you can, that'd be great. For now though, I have got a really fun episode coming up where I'm going to be speaking to a new guest about a topic of the week requested by quite a few people. We'll also be tackling neurodiversity champions, tiny epic wins, and the perennial classic What the Flip section, so I'll stop the procrastination and we can launch right into it.
Meet the guest.
So this week's guest is someone who was introduced to me by a mutual friend of ours, Angela, who said that they're a regular listener of Neuroshambles and they would make an excellent guest. I obviously have full faith in Angela's judgment, so I booked an intro call with them to discuss potential topics that was supposed to last 15 minutes, as with all of my guests, and I think it went well over an hour before we even got onto the topic bit of that call. So I think we're going to have plenty to talk about on this one. As well as being a friend of a friend, she's also in a neuroshambolic household and a mental health occupational therapist for the NHS. So I am overjoyed to be able to welcome to the show, it's Kirsty Hockenhull. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you.
Did you bow then? Yeah. I like to see it.
I did bow, yes.
No one can see it, it's audio.
Maybe it's like, I think I've listened to it so much, maybe you're like royalty now, you know, I felt like bowing.
Yeah, hardly. So, obviously, when we launch into any episode of Neuroshambles, as you know, we need to know a little bit about your setup. So what neurodivergencies are you dealing with at your end, Kirsty?
So it's a neurodiverse blended
Nice.
household. It's the dream. So I have two children and my husband has two children, and my two are a girl who's 17 and a boy who's 9, and my oldest one identifies as autistic, but we didn't really realise that, I think, until a little bit later. And because she's a little bit older, the school system was a bit different then. And I think the world was a bit different and we weren't really picking up on some of those things. I was quite aware from when she was young that there was something that, you know, some challenges she was having that didn't seem neurotypical, I guess. But she never wanted a diagnosis, so we never pursued it. And things seem to have gone a lot more smoothly for her. Whereas my son, who's 9, got diagnosed with autism when he was 7. And that's primarily because he was having great difficulty at school with reading and writing and understanding kind of social conventions and all of that kind of stuff. He's suspected ADHD, but we haven't gone down that road yet. And he's currently been assessed for dyslexia. He's got poor working memory, proprioception problems, reading and writing difficulties, really smart, but, you know, all of those kind of things. And then we've got 2 stepchildren, 15 and 16. The oldest suspects that she has autism. She had elective mutism as a child, lots of sensory issues, executive function difficulties, really high anxiety. And the youngest, probably neurotypical, but is very pathologically shy around adults and a bit
okay.
But we don't, you know, it's a kind of mixed bag.
It's a giddy blend of different neurotypes, diagnosed and undiagnosed.
Yeah, my husband identifies as ADHD and my ex-husband has identified as autistic for as long as I've known him, but never's gone for a diagnosis, and recently found out about PDA and said, I think that's the reason our marriage failed.
Oh, really?
Well, there's lots of reasons, but he kind of went, I think that's what
I okay, let's just pin it on that and move on, shall we?
Yeah.
So you appear to be drawn to neurodivergence, like a neurodivergent magnet.
I think I do, but I identify as a neurotypical.
I like the way you said that quietly then.
I did say that quietly.
I don't want to jinx it. Similarly, me as well. So, which we'll get onto. So thank you for introducing me to your neuroshambolic household and extended household, and anyone that comes near you, by the sounds of it. We will crack on with the topic of the week, because it's one that I've been wanting to talk about for quite a while now.
What's the topic of the week?
So this week's topic of the week is one that quite a few people have requested recently. When I was doing a talk in Bristol, I had several people come up to me and say, could you do one about this? I was like, it's a good job. I've booked it in the future then. Because I think a lot of people find themselves in a similar situation to me in their own neuroshambolic families. Namely that they, being non-neurodivergent, are considered to be essentially outsiders in their own home. I like to think of it as being a low neurotypical crouton bobbing about in a spicy soup of neurodivergency. And although I consider myself fortunate not to have to face so many of the challenges that my neuro-exceptional kids face on a daily basis, it is sometimes pretty tricky, I think, to try and bridge the gap in how our different brains work. So I think we should talk about it. I wanted to talk about being the token neurotypical in your household, because I think that is how we both identify. I've alluded to this several times in the podcast, but although I consider myself neurotypical, I am fully undiagnosed. So there's no proof of that. Several Neuroshambles guests are convinced that I have some form of neurodivergency because they don't tend to get on well with neurotypicals. That's the only basis I've got. I don't think it's official diagnostic criteria. I told Angela, our mutual friend, that we were going to be recording this together and what the topic was about being the only neurotypical in your household. And her response was, ha, 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 ha. It's so cute that you both think that. Winky face emoji.
Yes,
she said a similar thing to me.
It's safe to say the jury's still out on our neurotypes. But I think either way... From my own perspective, I identify as neurotypical because I certainly don't experience the vast majority of challenges that I know my neurodivergent kids and friends do. And I guess it's all relative, isn't it? You know, I think it's safe to say that we're the least neurodivergent in our household.
Yes. I think that would be, maybe a better...
We'll take that. We'll use that as our standing
jumping
point.
Off point.
It's like basically the least drunk person at a party is the one that has to assume responsibility for getting everyone home. That's us. And obviously with that comes challenges, I think. It's a blessing and a curse, isn't it, sometimes, Kirsty? I'll just make a quick clarification. When I talk about my neuroshambolic family, I'm also including Tam in that, because Tam is diagnosed autistic ADHD. Obviously, Tam and I are separated, but we're still part of the same family, if that makes sense. There's constant communication as there is with yours, right?
Yeah, it's exactly the same. Me and my ex-husband are really, really good friends, and we co-parent together, and he's one of my best friends, actually.
Nice.
It's very positive.
Yeah, so you're all part of the same family.
We're a family. We consider ourselves to be a family weird one. Still. Yeah.
That's how I feel about it. Not your family, by the way. I haven't met them. I'm not judging your family. I'm just saying we're just a bit alternative, So I think in a way, being the neurotypical, I see my role a little bit as being a translator between the neurotypical world that I inhabit and that basically is the world at large, and the neurodivergent world that my children inhabit, and I feel like it's my duty sometimes, or my responsibility, to help ease that transition between the two different worlds.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because I think that one of the things that they both say, quite frequently is the world is not right. And I tend to agree with them a lot of the time. We have lots of conversations about that, about the fact that when a teacher might bring up that they're not communicating properly, or they're they're missing social cues, and they kind of say, well, that's because the other person isn't communicating in a way that I understand.
Yeah, which is the double empathy problem, right? It's not me that's messed up. It's that there's a miscommunication on both sides.
Yeah. So we talk a lot about that. But yes, I am kind of like an interpreter, I think.
Yeah, because I guess how aware are they? Because obviously, I am aware kind of, sometimes too aware of the
Yeah.
unspoken rules of society. So when
Yes.
we're out and about, I am really aware of not getting too near to people and, not swinging off the railings when there's someone standing right there. Like all of that.
Yeah.
I feel like I need to police that a little bit.
Yeah.
And my kids don't really pick that up. But how aware of your kids about the expectations of the neurotypical world?
I think I'm a bit like you. I'm very hypervigilant, when it comes, and I'm get embarrassed really easily, and I'm a bit ashamed of it. Sometimes when you take your kids to the playground, I don't know if this happens to you. You take your kids to the playground and they start interacting with other kids, probably typical kids, and things are fine for a little while, and then I'm always hovering, with both of them. When my oldest was young as well, I'd always be hovering in the corners, waiting for something to kind of disintegrate and having to step in.
You can never relax, can you? As a parent of neurodivergent kids in that sort of environment, and birthday parties is another one, and that kind of thing where you're on edge needing to swoop in, not because you're being a controlling parent, not because you're one of those helicopter parents, it's because, like I say, I feel like it's my job to smooth that over sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, an example of my oldest one, it was her 8th birthday party, and I tried to do a big birthday party, like you think that's what you're supposed to do, and I, made a cake and got balloons and invited about 20 kids around to a small house at the time.
Which, in retrospect, is a terrible idea. But
it was.
You didn't know, right?
I didn't really know, and I was kind of annoyed that she was like not reacting in the way that I was expecting her to. And she took one friend that she trusted and she locked herself in the bedroom for the entire party. I just kind of thought, okay, well, it's obviously completely overwhelming. I wasn't really thinking of autism at that point.
Right, okay.
But even from that point, obviously there was something not quite working and they were overwhelmed. So I just kind of went back down and put some Beyonce on, and everybody just started jumping up and down and ate cake and got on with the party.
Yeah, okay.
And that was that. And I just tried to kind of style it out, really. It's those kind of things that, started to happen more and more, I guess.
I mean, I think over time I've changed, because I think initially when I was parenting my kids, I was very much, well, quite like my dad used to be, like a bit of a sergeant major role. I'd like shout and demand neatness and order, and I was responsible for their, appearance in public and their behavior in public. And I see it very differently now, because I'm not, because they can't change the way they are, and also the more you start to question this kind of thing, the more you realize actually that's not really hurting anyone. It's a bit boisterous, but actually, I can let that slide. So I'm a lot less like a sergeant major now. I'm a lot more like a ringmaster, and this is the clown show.
Yeah. I think,
they're the anti-establishment figures who create good-natured havoc wherever they go, and I'm just there giving them a platform to do it and not trying to rein it in too much.
Yeah. Probably what helped me a little bit is I've always been a pretty liberal parent, and I think when both of them were presenting, with these kind of challenges, I think I kind of I think naturally it was perhaps a little bit easier, maybe than you're describing, where you went in with a whole more traditional parenting kind of.
Yeah, and I'm sort of a bit ashamed of that in a way, but that is what I thought would happen. Do you know what I mean? And it was only like that because they weren't doing what I wanted them to do. So I was like, well, if I puff my chest up and I look cross and I shout, then that's what my dad did, and that worked for me. So, and obviously you have to then completely change the way that you approach that. So now, like I say, it's just a lot more freeform, and I just let them be themselves to a degree. I'm essentially just the straight man in a comedy troupe.
But do you feel that's made you a better person or a better parent? Do you feel that liberated by that?
I do. I feel really relieved, actually. Yeah, because I'm not trying to hold water in a sieve, because that was how it felt. Do you know what I mean? Is that I'm trying to control this behavior that isn't, it doesn't need to be squished. Yeah. That actually it's coming from a different place, and they don't have the same understanding of what the societal norms are. So therefore, how can they be expected to live up to it? And I didn't want them to keep failing all the time. So I let it slide. And I'm still, as you were saying, I'm still acutely aware sometimes of feeling a little bit embarrassed by when other people try and shame you, when you can see people rolling their eyes at each other, or tutting, or muttering under their breath. That is, I'm acutely aware of that, which it can be a little bit mortifying at times.
Yeah.
But...
So with my youngest, it happens a lot in settings like restaurants.
Right. Okay.
That's my kind of the big one, I suppose. Whereas he wants to behave like an adult. He's like a tiny grown up, like all the time.
Okay.
And so
does he speak in that way as well?
He does. He calls me mother.
Oh, love it. I love it.
Mother. It's always, and it's been like that since he was about 3 years old. He's always, even though he was really speech delayed, one of the first things he said was not mummy, but mother, like a small Victorian child.
If I'm going to speak, it should be proper.
Yes, it'll be proper. And so he'll often usher waiters over,
nice.
like he's in control of everything. And then he'll order for it. And he's been doing this since he was really young, ordering for himself, very precisely what he wants. And then afterwards, he'll shout across the restaurant, I hope you get a pay rise. Or you've done a great job, this kind of thing.
5 stars.
And in these moments, I'm kind of going,
no, that's adorable.
It is adorable, but it's also, I think some people think it's really precocious. And I think so. I have had eye rolls, particularly from younger, younger waiting staff, who are a bit like, oh, bloody hell, what a jumped up little shit. And that's my worry, is he's lovely and he's just trying to be a grown up. But he's just so kind of keen to express his gratitude.
It was really,
his, but it comes off as overly confident and a bit precocious sometimes. And
Jay does this sometimes. It's hilarious.
Does he?
Yeah.
What does he do?
I've started going to Pizza Express with him.
Oh, this is what it's Pizza Express.
They know what they're getting. It seems to be a magnet for neurodivergency. Pizza Express. I don't know, because it's so consistent. So Jay, I actually took him there on Valentine's Day. Not for Valentine's Day. It was just the day that we had time to go. And then I said to the waiter, can you show me, for a joke, because Jay was there, I went, can you show me your most romantic table? and Jay looked at me and he kind of started laughing. And then we went to this table, and then just as the waiter went to turn away, he turned to me and went, well, that's enough about me, handsome. How's your day?
He sounds brilliant.
He was hilarious. Yeah. And also he's like very overly formal with the waiter. Like the waiter, the sun was in our eyes and he pulled the blinds. Yeah. And he was just so polite and thankful in a way that he never is at home. Like he was there, like, thank you awfully for doing that. It's like, dude, who are you in public? At home, I get nothing. None of this treatment.
No.
But I guess, just to bring it back to the topic, is that as a neurotypical, I am aware of these eye rolls and these tuts and this invisible judgment in a way that Tam never is. Or that Tam might be, but Tam doesn't care. Whereas I actually get affected by it. I don't want that judgment, so I try and navigate around it where I can.
I mean, it's exactly the same with me and my ex-husband. He doesn't see it as a problem. He doesn't get upset by it. And also gets irritated at me, or used to get irritated with me for getting upset.
Yeah. And it's not like the example that you gave is probably not the one that is the best encapsulates that, just like mine with Jay. But it's more about being noisy in a library, or like on a bus and swinging around on a bus and sort of being too near to people. All of this kind of stuff. The ADHD stuff is very kind of prevalent there for my lot. And it's some stuff that Tam was totally fine with and just let him get on with. And I was like, just gritting my teeth going, I don't want to look. He's nearly knocked a woman over. So I think the thing is, as a neurotypical surrounded by a team of neurodivergents, I feel like I'm on high alert at all times.
Yeah.
I think that's it. Like I feel like I need to look out for other people's feelings. Yeah. And also my own kids. Because I need to be aware of anything that might trigger them.
Yeah.
If there's something that is, if I see a bus coming down, like a lorry coming down the road that is going to, it's going to dysregulate Otto, I will swoop in and cover his ears because he's not really going to be aware of it. He can't really preempt that. Yeah. And then also trying to stop Jay from just walking off without us knowing where he's gone because he's just in his own world. And there's so many things that I feel like I have to manage, I guess.
I mean, you've got three, three who are all quite close in age. And I think that's I feel I feel for you because, you know, I've got two, both with their unique difficulties, but there's an 8-year, 9-year gap, you know, and
Yeah.
one's nearly off to university, which is I never thought would happen.
Yeah, wow.
By the way, you're in this state of like high anxiety almost all the time, aren't you? Because you're or hypervigilance.
Aren't most parents of neurodivergent kids though?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's so draining. I mean, I've just got, you know, now one that I'm having to worry about when I'm out and about, and that's very, very tiring. Just making sure he doesn't get run over, making sure he doesn't kind of isn't too inappropriate with people. He swears a lot as well. Like he really
Okay.
loves swearing so
And people
much.
judge that so harshly as well, don't
And people
they?
judge it, but his justification is, well, you swear and everyone else swears, so why can't I? And I don't have an answer for him. Well, what are you going to say? Because I told you so, or because adults don't like it? There isn't really a good reason.
Yeah. I mean, we have a similar thing in our house with burping.
Right,
It's a thing I cannot, like India will not listen to me saying, please don't burp, it's horrible.
Right.
You just burped in my face. That's really gross.
That is quite funny, though.
But well, it is. But I have to try, right?
You've got to train, you know, not
Yes,
outside the house.
not
And I think
working.
that's the thing. The youngest doesn't swear very much outside of the house. He doesn't do
Okay.
it at school, and he doesn't do it in front of his grandparents. So I think, you know,
He's
it's
aware of
okay.
context and appropriateness. Okay.
I get quite embarrassed sometimes when he thinks people aren't listening, and he'll just go, "Fucking hell," blah, blah, you know, and shit, and like, you know, just I don't know, just got those two are his particular favourites, and so you know, it's the loudness I think, and the expressiveness, and the I don't know, unbridled joy of
of doing it, of getting away with it.
Yeah.
I think one of the most glaring differences between neurotypes in our house are the communication differences.
Yes.
Because there is obviously my kids are very different in the way in how they communicate, and I am very expressive and I'm very like emotionally open, and I want to talk about things, and my kids don't really do that. And I've had to learn not to get offended by bluntness.
Yeah.
You know, which at first was just like, dude, who are you talking to? You know, some of the things that Jay says to me are really quite, you know, quite harsh. This time that I recounted on a previous podcast, Jay said something that basically looked inside my very soul and found that one little kernel of self-doubt that I had, and then held it out into the open for all to see, and everyone laughed, right? And it was this. I was driving along, and he was in the car in the back seat. He was staring out the window, and everyone was quiet for a change. And then he went, "Daddy, you used to be a comedian, but now you're just a boring data guy." You know, right? And it was just
that's as low as it gets.
It was like, you know, I think everyone's got this thing that they hope no one notices or no one calls them out on, right? And that was mine, and I'd buried that really deep. So he did that, and everyone started laughing, and I was like, "Fuck!" I nearly had to pull over, like just to collect myself, because it was, I was really, you know,
and deep. Yes,
but he's not meaning to do that. He didn't say it to be mean.
Yeah.
And he's not thinking about the effect that will have on me. It's just an observation. He's right.
Yeah.
Like, he's correct. I think, to be honest, that is probably why I started doing this podcast. When he said that, I was like, I'm not just a boring data guy.
I've got a podcast.
Yeah, exactly. But you have to develop a really thick skin, I think, around our kids.
I mean, my kids will often point out things about me physically as well, like a lot, and that's quite difficult. And I'm a much older mum with my youngest, and the thing he says quite frequently and quite openly at school is, "Mum, you're 20 years older than all the other mums." Because I'm 50 and they're all 30.
But it's true as well, so you can't even refute it.
No.
You just have to go,
Or why have you got that weird hair on your chin, you know, or why?
Yeah, I get Otto says that
really
sometimes.
Wrinkly.
Yeah, Daddy's fat. It's like, dude, come on. Like, you know, I know you're neurodivergent, but you know better than that, right?
Yeah.
And then he does. He goes, "Oh, sorry." As if like it only just occurred to him. And I'm sure it has. So you do have to, to develop this thick skin. But it is on us to accept it. As the neurotypical,
yes,
you have to understand where it's coming from. you have to swallow your pride and your ego and just sort of brush it off, and that's not always easy to do. If you're exhausted and you're tired and you've been doing everything for them all day, and then something like that comes out, it's like, come on, like, really?
Throw me a bone.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I don't know about you, but something I say a lot is, "Can you just be nice?"
Really? No, I don't say that.
Which I shouldn't do, because I should just accept it, like you said. But I often, I guess, because there's a bit of comedy in it, I go, "Please be nice to mummy. Come on, I've had a long day."
That is it. But like, I think, because there is a case, I think, for letting them know when they've said something to hurt you.
Yeah.
But you can't keep doing it every time. So it is just easier to just go, well, this is my life. I am a punching bag.
Yeah.
A figure of fun. I'll just deal with it and move on. But it's, you know, like I say, I think that if any neurotypical kid spoke that way to their neurotypical family, if I spoke to my dad like that, fucking hell, I wouldn't be here. It just wouldn't have happened. And then sometimes you do hear your neurotypical friends talk about, oh, my son was so rude to me today. It's like, oh, what have you got? Really?
That's nothing.
I'll see you that and raise you a big nose.
But you're getting it from all three all the time. And do you think that they kind of, because they're quite close in age, and do you think that they're, because you're all so close together and they're all in each other's spaces all the time, that they influence each other?
Yeah, I think they do.
There's a family way of communicating with you.
Yeah, there is. And I think, and I am very lighthearted with them. So when they do that, I do, I make light of it, or I pretend to be mock offended, and just because
whilst crying inside.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't think they don't. I know that it's not something that they mean to be hurtful.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just going to assume that. I'm sure occasionally it is.
I totally believe that. It's just a factual kind of thing, without these kind of like this unspoken thing that neurotypicals have, where they seem to, we understand all the nuances and the non-verbals and the, we kind of,
and what's appropriate to say and what's not
appropriate, and what's not, and the volume and the tone and the, all of these things that they don't really understand, or that they can't see it or see the point of it. Just cut to the chase and just say what you think, which is maybe a better way to be. Sometimes I don't know. I
don't agree with that. I think there's definitely a case for not telling everyone that they're stupid or fat or ugly, or
Well, not that.
Let's leave some mystique to this. What I think
maybe
of you is a mystery.
Maybe in some situations, a bit of that is useful. Perhaps, cutting through the bullshit.
Another one, I think, in terms of communication, that's quite an interesting one is special interests. So when our kids talk to us about their special interest, or at us about their special interest, because, again, and there's something I covered in a previous episode, you sort of learn that that's just the way that they want to share with you, right? So it's actually, to look at the place where that comes from and go, right, I'm just going to strap in and listen to you talk incessantly about Pokemon, and, every now and again ask a follow-up question just to keep it going. But we just have to sit and deal with that.
How do you manage that?
It's usually Jay, to be honest. Otto is much more about just demanding your company and your time and your collaboration. Jay is like, I've just got out my room and I'm now going to fire this thing at you because I want to share it with you because I've not seen you for a little bit. And typically I just let him get on with it, but sometimes I go, do I need to listen to this? And he'll go, no, not really, I just need to get it out. And I quite like that honesty. So it's like, right, well, I'll keep doing the dinner and you can keep talking.
That's I do a similar thing. I mean, so my oldest is got a very specific special interest, cartoons. Like, that's just her entire existence is all about cartoons. Lives in a cartoon world, and gets hyper fixated every 3 or 4 months on a particular cartoon or a particular cartoon character, and will explore it till it's dried up and there's nothing left, basically. And so for those 3 or 4 months, all of us live in that world around the dinner table.
And she's just sharing that with you and talking about it
to everybody. And she's very funny, so sometimes it can be, great fun, but sometimes it's like at least 2 or 3 times a day I have to sit down and listen for quite a long time about, she won't mind me saying this, but I think in my head, sometimes I just kind of, not faking it, because I am listening, but I think, well, this is the interesting thing, isn't it? Should I be honest, a bit like you're doing, and kind of go, do I need to listen to this? And sometimes I just kind of sit there and I go, oh really, that's
Wow.
wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing, and I feel really disingenuous doing
But that's
that.
because we're obligated to
Yes.
do that, because we identify as neurotypical,
Yeah.
because that's what you do in those kind of
Yeah.
social conversations. Now, the other way round,
Yeah.
if we're talking to our kids about something they're not
Yeah.
interested in, do they do the same?
Yeah.
No, they fucking
Not
don't. They just
interested
walk
at
off.
all.
Just literally,
Yeah.
Jay will just walk out of the
Oh,
room
wow,
mid-sentence.
yeah.
Like, no, it's just like, not even like, I'm not interested.
Yeah.
He just like, it's just like the TV's on. He's not interested in the channel, so he'll walk off. Which, you know, for me, who's had a sort of a grounding in stand-up comedy, so is weirdly hyper aware of an audience and keeping an audience entertained. He just walks off, he's like, oh, it's just me and the cat then. Fuck.
I'll just carry on talking to the cat.
Yeah, exactly. And then he walks off and like, oh man, I've just absolutely bombed in my own kitchen.
Is there anything that you talk about that he does show interest in, even if it's not
very rarely? And it happens sometimes. You're like, oh my God, it
keep
happened.
going.
I mentioned it in an episode once. I started talking about Donald Trump and he just started asking me questions about him. And I'm like, sweet. I've got so much to say about him. But no, normally I don't think, they never ask a question.
Yeah.
About, like, ask me a question.
I don't.
Do you get that in your house?
My oldest doesn't. My youngest does ask a lot of questions, actually, and
about you and what you do and where you've been going.
He'll ask me big questions, and they're always like moral questions. Like, would you know, this is the scenario, you know, and he'll present a scenario like, you know, you have to save either me or my sister. And this, you know, there's a shark, or there's, you know, all of these kind of moral quandaries, you know. He asks me a lot of, and I just go,
but they're not questions about you, about like where you grew up or what your childhood was like, or, you know, just like personal questions about that. My kids have no interest.
Occasionally he'll ask, what was the best day of your life? He asks the same question over and over again. He gets really stuck into certain things. And so for days on end, every day he might ask me, what was the best day of your life? And I was like, oh, I told you about that yesterday. And I think he's got working memory problems, so I don't know whether he just can't remember or whether he just feels good asking it again because he got a good response, or I don't know what
that's a lot. I think a lot like Otto likes to repeat that kind of thing.
It feels good to do that.
Otto loves repeating successful conversations.
Yeah. Oh, didn't we do well? You know, wasn't that good?
We did this quiz about Super Smash Bros. So we're going to do it again.
And we're going to talk about
really? This is like the fourth time this week.
So all of that, I guess what you're saying, all of that is really draining, isn't it, for you as a parent? You know,
and it's it's on us to make those compromises, to be and to not get offended by it when it's not reciprocated.
Yeah, and I think I understand that now. You know, it took me, my oldest never really asked me any questions, and it was very much all about, you know, whatever hyperfixations they were having.
Having said that, I've just realised it does go in at some point, because Jay understood that I used to be a comedian.
Well, there you go.
So he's going in, he's just storing it for later when he can wound me with it. I think probably the hardest thing for me in our neuroshambolic household, being the little floating neurotypical, is the emotional disconnect between me. My emotional needs are not in any way considered. I have emotional needs for a start, I think. And that's quite hard sometimes, I think. Because, and this is not just with the kids, but with Tam, as I've spoken to previously on the podcast as well, in that I needed to have my emotions looked after. Like, I needed empathy sometimes, and I wouldn't very often get, or don't often get, emotional empathy in my household.
Interesting thing about having a relationship with somebody who doesn't validate your emotions. I used to see as possibly somebody who might be a bit narcissistic and is gaslighting me. But actually they were neurodivergent, and they weren't able to validate my emotions because they didn't understand it.
Yes, that's the crucial difference, isn't it? It's not that they're aware of it and they're deliberately manipulating you to make you question yourself. It's just like, well, I don't get that. So why would you?
Yeah.
So I need to talk about stuff. I don't know if you've noticed. I've made a podcast so I can just
Therapy.
do exactly
therapy.
that. Really,
Yeah.
is it exactly? It's not free.
It's a lot of time and
It
energy.
costs me a lot of money.
Yeah.
But I need to talk about things that affect me, and I make sense of things by talking them out.
Yes.
And I couldn't ever do that in my relationship with Tam, and I can't do that with the kids.
Yeah.
Like they don't have that. So if they're dysregulated, I want to make it better, right? So I then say, well, tell me what's wrong.
Yeah.
What's going on? And India will just get in this absolute funk and will be selectively mute. So will just growl and won't tell me. And I'm trying to sort of give her my phone to type it on. And sometimes that works, but sometimes she's too far gone and that won't work. And similarly, Otto, I presume, has alexithymia, so he can't interpret his own emotions, so can't tell me. He just knows something was wrong.
Yeah.
And like today, everyone was all over the place.
Yeah.
Like all over the place. I'm fairly sure that it's because the clocks have just gone forward.
Yeah.
And so it's light outside and they're going to bed and it's light outside and they're just like, what the hell's going on? Time has shifted. The world has changed. I don't know. But they don't know that. And so they can't communicate that. Whereas I'm very emotionally in tune. Like I know why I'm feeling what I'm feeling and I can articulate it. So in a household like this, I don't have anything to do with that. There's nowhere for that to go.
Do you ever, just in terms of them being able to identify how they feel, do you ever use the zones of regulation?
They do that a little bit at school.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I can see.
It doesn't,
I know where they are.
Yeah. But in terms of them knowing where they are.
I don't ask them. Because I don't, it's not a thing that I really ask. I got some emotion cards at one point, that you get like a flip through the emotions and find the one that describes you, but they have no interest in that at all. It's just like they're not interested whatsoever.
Fair enough.
So it's me that needs that.
Yeah.
It's me that needs them to label it. They don't need that. They just need some space, I guess.
I guess the only reason I mentioned
it
was just because if they had a tool where they could identify, then you use the same tool to say how you're feeling. Do you know what I mean? Then sometimes that could be potentially useful, I guess, to try and bridge the gap. But
No, absolutely. And I think you're right. But I also think that I am the encumbrance here. I am the problem. Like me wanting to talk about it or me wanting to know how they're feeling is the problem. Right. Like, because actually they'll regulate themselves. I can't solve their problem in that way. And I want to, because I want to fix stuff, right? But really, they just need to go and have their own space or regulate themselves in whatever way they know how to do. And it's time is really the only thing, not me going, how you feeling? Point to the card. There's like, fuck
what's
off.
Going on?
I'm feeling pissed off because you're in my face asking me to point to an emotion card. And that I find it quite hard sometimes because
it's distressing, isn't it?
It's a part of who I am, right? I'm an emotion. I need to talk about emotions, and it's probably the single biggest thing that led to the breakdown of my marriage, was because we had issues and I needed to talk about it, and it was just a wall. And again, I've talked about it previously, so I would try and talk things out with Tam, and that would dysregulate them because of the alexithymia and like just not really having a label for their own emotions. So that would lead to shutdowns. So then I would feel like I was in the wrong for trying to have the discussion in the first place. So not only am I not getting my emotional needs met, they're now overwhelmed and I'm feeling guilty, and it's just a big fucking shit show. So I wonder how many other Neuroshambles listeners who identify as neurotypical in their neuroshambolic households feel that it's really hard. They have to compromise on not having their emotions factored in.
Yeah. I've noticed a big difference from being a lone parent or a co-parent on my own with my two children to being in a new marriage with somebody who also has neurodivergent children. And learning together as a new blended family about all of the children's, so we need a dating service for neurotypicals with neurodivergent children who want to be in a blended family. I think that's awesome.
But it works with you.
But it works. It really works. I think that we've learnt together. We've been together nearly 7 years, and
Okay.
since the kids were quite little, and we've kind of learned and realised together as we've
Right.
seen them
And
grow up.
he identifies as
He
neurodivergent, right?
identifies
So
as
is he
ADHD.
able to kind of to validate your emotions and to handle that?
Yes, because I think with ADHD, it's a bit, in terms of emotional,
Yeah.
stuff, a little
Hmm.
bit perhaps easier in that department. Maybe I might be wrong.
Yeah. No. No. I think that's valid.
But with that in isolation, I guess. So I felt my emotions are very validated in that relationship in a way that they weren't before.
Which was with autism,
Yes,
right? Your previous one was autistic.
autism. Yeah,
Yeah. So maybe that's it. I don't know if that's it,
all
but I
about
just
finding
feel
your
like
neurotype to have a
it's about
relationship
finding
with, isn't it? The
your
right one,
neurotype.
the right type. That's what
I don't, because obviously Tam masked for
yeah,
15 years. So, I thought I'd found one.
yeah.
And
Well,
then we sort of, get into that position where you are almost imperceptibly and unknowingly accommodating their needs by
yeah,
not having those conversations that you want to
yeah,
have, because they never go well.
yeah,
So the way you communicate is different, and because you have no realistic expectation that they're going to be able to meet your needs. So then that relationship evolves into something essentially dysfunctional, right?
that isn't real.
Yeah.
They don't feel like they're able to be themselves. You
Yeah,
know.
there's a lot going on there.
Yeah,
I will do an episode on relationships at some
yeah.
point, so I'm not going to go too much further into this, because I think there's a lot more that I want to
Mm.
discuss about relationships and how they affect raising neurodivergent
Yes.
kids, and how raising neurodivergent kids affects your relationships. But it's too soon
Yeah.
for me to be able to get any real perspective on it at the moment.
Yeah.
So that is, probably season 3, maybe season 4. We don't know. After a lot more therapy, let's put it that
Yeah.
way.
I mean, how do you? So didn't get it from your ex-partner, and you're not getting that
Mhm.
from your children. So I know this probably helps doing this.
Neuroshambles.
But
It's a bit of a
where else
lifeline.
do you get it from friends, or do you
From friends, but then you when I feel like you're whining, it kind of gets to that level as well. I'm like, just every time I phone, it's like, I've just got to get it off my chest, So no, I think to a degree, you just suppress it.
Yeah.
That you just damp it down because it's got no home in your house.
Yeah.
So you don't express it, and so that's obviously high on my list of criteria for new partners. Emotional intelligence. The
Yes.
ability to not shut me down if I tell you that I'm feeling sad.
Yeah.
Bit of back rub, maybe, make me a cup of tea, something like that,
Yeah.
instead of just rolling your eyes and walking out of the room.
Yeah.
That'd be nice. So one of the things that is quite interesting is feeling like the odd one out in your own home. That sort of underpins all of this, is that I am aware that I am different, right? It's very clear in our household. I'm often referenced by the kids and by Tam as like, oh, daddy's a bit different.
Yeah.
And my neurotype means, my suspected neurotype certainly means that I'm the weirdo in our house. And I quite like it. I can't be annoyed by that because they're owning their neurotype and they are emboldened by it, and they've got a sense of who they are in this space. And for once, they're in the majority. Yeah. So I'm fine. I'm fine being the odd one out there.
Do they tell you you're a weirdo?
Oh, India constantly. Yeah. And she points stuff out which I think is perfectly normal, but India thinks I'm really weird because I eat anything. She's like, Daddy will just eat any food. Like, what the fuck? Yeah, basically. Yeah. Obviously, there's food I prefer, but if there's food that I'm not that keen on, I'm still going to eat it because I'm neurotypical, right? And because I'm hungry. Yeah. And so I don't get the extreme sensory reaction to non-preferred foods that my kids do. So I will just eat it. And India is weirdly fascinated by the fact that I will eat anything. And she points it out all the time. She's like, how can you like all food? That's just weird.
So does she view it as a superpower or as something that she's disgusted by?
No, she's deeply unnerved by it, I think. Like, she's suspicious. Like, I've got no standards. Because it's a binary thing for my family. Yeah. It's either a yes food or an absolutely fucking no food. There's nothing in between. So me just going, I don't really like celery, but I won't pick it out of the dish, blows their mind. I'm the weirdo. There's a Chinese saying, which again I've referenced on another episode before, but I think it's very relevant here. It is 99 monkeys without noses laugh at the monkey with a nose. That's very much how I feel in my own house sometimes, of like, because what's normal and what's not in our household. I'm not normal, and that must be quite... I like the fact that that's probably quite empowering for them.
Yeah, that they have this safe space, I think.
They have this safe space, and I'm outnumbered.
Yeah. My oldest calls me weird all the time. And my family, which you're all so weird. You communicate so weirdly. I don't understand it. I just, she just finds it all a bit unbearable and forced. I think she feels that when we're a family, when I'm with my mum, my dad, and my sister, there's a forcedness to our communication. There's all these kind of pleasantries that we all say to each other and small talk, and she's just sitting there going, what is this bullshit?
Well, exactly. I can now obviously see it from the neurodivergent perspective, because again, we're the interpreter between the two different neurotypes, and so no, I can totally get it now and find amusement in it.
But I think that's the as a thought exercise, to flip it around and just to see it from their perspective. How we are weird. It's a bit like my husband was saying today. He reads a lot about anthropology and things like that, and saying about when people from indigenous tribes experience Western culture, a lot of the reactions is, you're all insane. You're all mentally ill. Like, what is wrong with you? I'm going back to the tribe where we're going to be one at nature, and just hang out and not work. And that must be how it feels.
I think it's really important for them to be able to express that inside their own home, because obviously when they're outside, they're the outsiders. Right? They're the odd ones out, because the world is geared towards neurotypicals. So to have this little safe space, and Tam is brilliant at talking about their neurotypes in positive and affirming ways. And that's really helped them to kind of connect with the way that their spiky profiles work. So yeah, it's really positive.
I sometimes feel a little bit jealous that I'm not part of the gang with my two and their dad, because they seem to hang out like a pack of lions, psychologically and physically. They just seem to understand each other.
Okay.
And things seem to be smoother over there than they are with me.
I think probably less so my lot, because they are all so different.
Right.
The way that Jay presents is completely the opposite to the way that Otto presents, and India is her own little ball of fun.
Yeah.
But they are in this space now where they are much more comfortable around each other, and they go and play together, and that's really nice. And I think that is part of that sort of bringing everyone together, and that shared neurotype that, again, let's just say, Tam has engendered with them. And I get involved in it as well. I don't really feel left out, but that's because I involve myself, I guess. Get stuck in. If you can't beat them, Kirsty.
Well, I try.
You got to join them.
But we always end up miscommunicating. That's the biggest.
Yeah. I think, to your point, I think it can sometimes feel a bit lonely. Not being as understood. Because sometimes I have these moments where I'm like, none of these lot understand how many accommodations I'm making for them. They're never going to get it. They'll never appreciate it. And that's obviously not why I'm doing this, and it shouldn't be why I'm doing this, but a bit of gratitude every now and again.
We do want that, though, don't we? We want to be thanked, and
are we wronged for doing that, though?
I want people to appreciate and see what I'm doing, but I think, and that's been almost really good for me, almost like in a kind of Buddhist way. Like, I've had to go.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, you went there. I just went self-pitying.
No, I kind of went, you know what? I don't need why am I looking for the thanks?
Yeah.
That's not healthy, is it?
Yes.
That's how I've turned it round in my head, I think. Is I've tried to be a bit more like Zen about it, basically.
Yeah, because largely I don't feel like I need it.
Yeah.
But every now and again, when it's been a really hard day and you've just like cooked 3 different versions of the same meal, and and then they've said it's disgusting because you've used one few herbs.
It tastes completely different, even though it's the
same
same meal.
Exactly. It's just like it's a different brand of tomato puree, a tiny facet of the meal, but they're on it, and you're just like, you guys have no fucking idea. Like you've got no understanding of the amount of compromises that I make to allow you to be your true authentic selves. And I don't think they ever will, because, you know, they're not able to put themselves in my shoes and think, oh, dude, you just spent the last 2 hours cooking 3 different meals. Whilst playing a game of Uno with Otto, fixing some like a Lego house that India was trying to do, and talking and allowing Jay to talk to you incessantly about Pokemon, right? They can't put themselves in my shoes and go, whoa, that's actually, you're doing a lot there, big guy.
Do you ever kind of, I mean, I know I do periodically, kind of, it not explode like in a big way, but I express my frustration about the fact that I've been in the kitchen for an hour and a half cooking this, that, and the other, and I do it. I do go, ugh!
Yeah, I do get frustrated sometimes and say, look, I'm already doing but my problem is I exaggerate, and exaggeration is not something that my kids will have any truck with, because they're like, look, dude, I'm already doing a million things, and then, well, actually it's not a million. I was like, oh god, because they're so pedantic, right? It's like, oh, I fucked it. I've lost my point now already, because I've tried exaggeration. They call me out on it. I'm in the wrong, and you know, back to square one. Yeah, and you do, like I say, you just have to swallow it, don't you? And just you know, the fact you don't get the gratitude and appreciation that, by the way, we definitely fucking deserve. Let's be clear about this. The amount that we have to kind of go through, you know, you just have to deal with it. One of the other things I find frustrating about being a neurotypical in a neurodivergent household, I never get to do things with them that only I want to do, right? They never just do things because I've made a decision. So, and I remember being raised by my parents, and we'd all have to do whatever my parents said.
Yeah.
So we'd be going to visit family friends we didn't want to visit, but we'd all get in the car and we'd all go and we'd put up with it, and then we'd come home. And that is not happening in my house. Because if my kids don't want to do something, I'm going to know about it, right? And there is no point in me trying to force it, because that's going to lead to overwhelm and dysregulation, and just having to then manage my way out of a situation that I should have known better than to put us in the first place. Which means that I have to go along for the ride a lot. And I don't really go, do you know what I'd really like to do? Let's all go to the beach.
Or the
you know,
pub.
That'd be nice. Or the pub. Oh, yeah, but that's too stressful for me.
Yes.
Like, you know, I do not need to be bringing my kids to the pub. But other people do. Neurotypicals do. It blows my mind.
They all hang out.
They're like, oh, look, they're you know, the parents want to go to the pub, so we're going to the pub. The kids do some colouring and play in the garden. Like, I would love to do that. That would be amazing, but I'll never get away with it. So it's this lack of compromise, and you know, there's no expectation for my kids to just suck it up because I'm the adult. Nor should there be, but it would be nice if every now and again they were like, oh, yeah, we'll do it for you.
Do you have any mutually enjoyable activities?
Well, that is the thing. Like, I don't like. There are loads of things that we do that we all enjoy. So, yeah, I don't want to make it sound like my life is completely miserable drudgery. No, like, we like playing board games and video games and eating pizza and watching films and camping. Like, there's and going to the woods. There's lots of things that we can do and do and I enjoy. But, you know, there's things like, I fancy being spontaneous, right?
Yes.
That would be quite nice. Oh, look, there's a something on. I'm so not used to being spontaneous. I couldn't think of a thing that might be just a spontaneous act that
you've been beaten down.
I have.
Those thoughts don't exist anymore.
Stop thinking about it. Look, the circus is in. I wouldn't want to go to the circus. See, I can't do it. But you know, like, if something happened that I wanted to go to, like so in Brighton there's a thing called the Great Escape, and there's loads of music and there's loads of people around. Like, it'd be great. We could go into town and just listen to some street performers and get some street food and just be around. I can't do that, and that would be nice, but I have to compromise on that, because again, I'm not blaming the kids, but it's just it's a thing that, as a neurotypical, I have to just not do and accept that that's just not something we can do.
Have you noticed at all as they've aged that things have changed, like from when they were little, in terms of being
more flexible?
More flexible, yeah.
Otto and India are more flexible because Otto, again, his part of Otto's profile is that as long as he's near an adult that he trusts, He'll do pretty much anything.
Yeah.
So that's fine. So I could probably do that. I do something spontaneous with Otto, but I've got 3 kids.
Yeah.
And I'm a solo parent.
Yeah.
So I have to get everyone on board in order to do anything. And that's quite a difficult thing to do. So we stay with the tried and trusted stuff. They love swimming. We go swimming. Great.
Yeah.
I hate swimming, Kirsty. Can't stand it. I'm so bored. There's so much faff. I can't, just as an act of swimming anyway. But I do it dutifully, every other weekend. I mean, do you find that are there things that you kind of would like to be able to do with your family that you just have to go, nah,
I'd like to be able
it's not an us thing?
Yeah, I'd like to be able to take them to a music festival. That's one of the things.
Okay.
I think because I used to still do go, but loved going to music festivals and something I always imagined that I would do. I'd be one of those twatty mums.
There's great mums who just pissed on Prosecco midway through the afternoon.
Middle class twat mums, pulling your children along in the little thing.
Yeah. So you've had to let go of that one.
I'm not that, I've had to let go of that fantasy. No, it's just not going to happen. It would be too stressful for them and for me, I think. It's too overwhelming. Something I would have really liked with both of them is to go to gigs, go to music festivals.
It's football for me as well.
Right.
I spent my life growing up around football, and I'd like to be able to go and go to a local football match with my kids, but they're not on board with it. So that's it. Because if at least one of them is appalled by the suggestion, then I can't do it. There's I can't just go, nope, this is what we're doing. We're doing this. We're going to this museum because it's just not worth it, right?
Have you ever had the opportunity to, with the co-parenting setup, to spend time individually with each child?
I'm doing that more now, and that is really awesome.
Yes.
I'm now going, right, I'm going to grab one child and do something one-on-one. So I took India to the farm the other day, and it was amazing. And me and Jay went and played crazy golf, and I'm going to be taking Otto tennis, just me and him, because he's really into that. So, that's really good. But again, it's not what I want to do. I don't really, farms are fine, but it's like, do you know what I mean? It's like, all right, let's go to the pub, dude.
Yeah.
Just me and you. I could do that probably with Otto. I could just sort of racking up the drinks and then play some Uno with him for 4 hours.
If I go to the farm with you, then you have to come to that. I don't know. Does that ever work?
No, that won't ever work. No, PDA, dude. It's a minefield.
I don't have that problem with the PDA thing.
But the thing is, right, about these compromises, yes, it's frustrating, and it's not anything that neurotypicals have to do in neurotypical families.
Yeah.
But I've got the capacity to do it.
Yeah.
I am not overwhelmed by doing things I don't want to do. So obviously it's on me to make the compromise and make the accommodations because I've got the spoons, I'm not it's not a great hardship for me. It might be slightly annoying that it's not necessarily my cup of tea, but I can just suck it up. Really. It's fine. It's fine. It is sometimes it does get a bit frustrating, but
well, that's why having an outlet is so vitally important, isn't it? Whether it's this or whether it's a friend, or because otherwise I think this is with my therapy head on.
Yeah.
You internalize it all and it eats you up a bit. It comes out sideways and other ways.
Because I'm now separated from Tam, so I have that time to myself.
Yeah.
Which is generally spent planning and editing this podcast, but that's beside the point.
Yeah.
So I do have that time to do that on my own, but it's really about I'd like to take the kids to this thing. I'd like to take the kids to a theme park.
Yes.
Not going to happen.
Yeah.
That would be a really fun thing for me to do with the kids, but...
What about individually, though? Would one of them be up for
Jay
it?
wouldn't tolerate the queues. Otto would be too scared by the rides. He's incredibly anxious.
Yeah.
And I don't think India would be that on board either. So it's not really worth it. But again, it's one of those things that it'd be nice to do, but just going to have to let it slide. I think one of the things I catch myself doing as an alleged neurotypical in a neuroshambolic household is projecting neurotypical needs onto my kids.
Yeah.
Because I think every neurotypical will have the expectation that to be honest, every parent will have the expectation that their kids are going to be neurotypical.
Yeah.
When you're first thinking of raising a family, you just assume, I think. So you start planning it all out, right? You start thinking about what your kids are going to look like. You do.
Mm-hmm.
You can't help it, because you look at what other kids of that age are like, and you'll go, right, so my kids are going to be into football and ballet, and they'll have loads of friends, and they'll be, going to like adventure playgrounds and having a great fun and loads of play dates and stuff. You map it all out. And I have to check myself quite a lot when I apply neurotypical concerns onto my kids that they just don't have. So the best example of this is friends, right? I want my kids to have lots of friends because I had lots of friends, and I think that's what makes you happy in school, right? I'm aware that that is a projection I'm making, and that they, Jay in particular doesn't want that many friends. So that's a bit of a weird one to get used to. You have to check yourself. Do you find yourself doing that, Kirsty?
I think, there's a sadness, isn't there? Because history isn't repeating itself, because the things that you make, have made you happy, you just... but yes, both of my children have small friend groups, but very close, but small. They both actually have 3 friends each that they're very close with, but no more than that. Everyone else is an acquaintance, whereas I had lots of friends, and still do. And I'm an extrovert, and I like going out, and I, love meeting with people. I feel energized by being around people.
Yeah, me too.
And they both feel quite overwhelmed by being around lots of people, and I feel sad, but that's a projection of my...
But it's a projection, absolutely right.
Exactly.
And hobbies is another one. Like, I want my kids to have lots of hobbies, and I hear other people going, oh, they do swimming one morning and fencing another evening, and like craft club or whatever.
I get quite angry about it sometimes, and I have to check myself, because I realise that it's a sadness within me about history not repeating itself. So I've actually come off Facebook relatively recently because it's annoying me so much. People posting pictures of their sporty, successful, really beautiful or handsome children, just really shoving it in your face. I don't know. It's obviously something I need to check, with myself. I need to have a little word with myself.
I mean, it's a bit wanky, to be fair. Like, any neurotypicals listening, don't do that, because, who are you impressing, really?
I don't know. I mean, I love the fact that my children are the way they are, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think they're amazing, and thank God for them, But there obviously is something in me that's going, I feel like I don't fit in, or...
Yeah, I do feel a bit triggered when people talk about, like, all of the hobbies that their kids are doing, and they moan about it, and it's like, I'd love them to be doing that. Like, I'd love my kids to be doing a hobby, but again... That's me projecting, right? Exactly. It's me going, I like doing lots of different things without thinking. Lots of different things in different environments with different groups of people is dysregulating to them, and therefore is going to trigger their nervous system. They're going to be overwhelmed. It's going to be an absolute shit show for them. So me sort of going, oh, you should do this, or do you want to try this? And the anxiety kicks in. I can see it in Otto's eyes immediately. He's like, anxiety kicks in. He doesn't want to do it. And I have to check myself and go, well... Because there's also that flip side of going, well, if we just stay at home, right, we just play board games or computer games or play the garden for a little bit, it's a bit lazy, isn't it? People are going to be looking at us going, well, you're not leaving the house. Judging. Okay, like you're not getting out of the house. But actually, that's not my preference. I'd much rather be able to go to Alton Towers or to do some pedlos or whatever it is. But that's not on the cards for me, and that's not because of me being a lazy parent. It's because of me being mindful of what their capacity is.
Well, and how happy they are. I mean, it's a wonderful thing when they're truly happy doing what they love doing, even though it might not be what you choose to do.
Yes, absolutely.
That's the most kind of important thing.
But then conversely, by not having these hobbies, as a neurotypical, I'm reducing my social circle. Because I'm not meeting other parents, right? And they're not going on play dates, so I can't go out because they're at someone else's house for the weekend. And like all of these kind of things that you sort of miss out on. And again, as the neurotypical that did that a lot as a kid and got loads out of that, like you say, I feel a little bit sad that they don't want to do that, and that is, again, it's on me, it's projection, but I feel it. I have to admit, I feel it.
It's my oldest is able to spend endless amounts of time on her own and thoroughly enjoy herself. Like, absolutely
Yeah.
loves her own company, will just draw and listen to music and play guitar and do, and just, she could be there for a week.
Without even noticing
And
that
I
you're
wouldn't,
not
and we just, and sometimes in the summer, in the holidays, she will do that, and I'll let her do that. And
Mm-hmm.
I had the best time ever. In the same way that I would say if I'd been to a festival or been hanging out with friends.
Yeah.
She's so happy, and how can you, just because it doesn't fit?
Yeah, it's interesting in that the things that you think are fun are not really what they think are fun. They think is absolute torture. Go to a festival, be like, no.
Yeah.
So you find that you have to check yourself a little bit.
Yeah.
If you've ever been a neurotypical in the midst of a neurotypical family, it's very enlightening how different it is, and how have you done that much?
Well, this is I don't know. I think
it's not advisable. It's not advisable, Kirsty, because you look at them, it's like, my fucking God, this is how I thought my life. It was like you're from a magazine or something. I had this recently that I've got, like, I went to stay with some friends, and they've got 2 girls, 9 and 15, and they all sit around for a family meal, and I was there, and they were chatting and talking about their day, and the kids asked the adults questions, and and had opinions about politics, and I'm just like, it was quite sad, and like, for me in a way, because I'm like, oh, this is lovely. I never see this, so I've kind of lowered those expectations. That's not what mealtimes look like in my house. Mealtimes in a house are an absolute fucking shambles, right?
But then isn't that funny? Like,
no, it is.
I mean,
it is. But then if you taste the other side of that, and you go, oh, this is what I'm missing out on. Yeah. And as a neurodivergent in that same situation with a neurotypical family, they wouldn't get that from it. They'd hate the small talk, and they would hate the sort of formality of it and stuff. But for me, it was like, oh, this is really nice. Yeah. And that's,
maybe because it's less stressful, I guess.
It's definitely less stressful, and it just feels more comfortable to me. Yeah. I guess, because I'm not having to, but I mean, the fact I'm in someone else's house also makes a difference, because I'm not having to, like, clean up and
they're making you dinner,
and police the kids' behaviour and all that stuff. But then their kids' behaviour did not need policing. They were adorable. Do you remember the programme called Wife Swap?
Yes.
They should have it where, like, a neurotypical gets planted into a neurodivergent family, and then a neurodivergent gets parachuted into a neurotypical family, and just see how they get on.
Bombs go off.
It would be genuinely, I would love to see it. I'm gonna pitch it. I reckon it'd be like, that'd be fascinating. Because it's not going to go well, is it? Like, I would give the neurotypical like 2 hours at max, until they run out screaming, going, "Oh my God!" And probably similar to the neurodivergents, going, "I can't deal with it. It's too quiet. It's too, everyone has to sit down for dinner."
I mean, I know what you mean, but I like our meal. It's funny. It's the one thing we all do every day is we sit down for a meal, and I'm quite insistent about the fact that we do that, even though it's very chaotic.
Yes, yeah. We do the same.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know why. Just a thing that has evolved, and we sit down, like, to start with, and then just. Yeah.
Do you have I have a circling child.
Yes. That's well, I have at least one. We've got a gorilla gym which has got a swing on it. Do you know the gorilla gym? It's amazing. It's apparatus that attaches to a door frame, and they use it loads. It's amazing. And so Jay very often eats on the gorilla gym. Otto stands on the chair, and India could be anywhere, and that's fine. But every now and again, you get a little taste of civilization as a neurotypical, and go, oh, I wouldn't mind a bit of this every now and again.
Yeah.
There should be like an outreach program. Are you a neurotypical trapped in a neurodivergent family?
We can help you. Call 0800 555.
We can home you with some neurotypicals for a weekend.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I wouldn't want it all the time. It'd be just like a little holiday.
A break. Respite. Respite care. For
neurotypical stuff.
Parents and neurodivergent children.
It's not all rubbish.
If you look at the positives of being the lone neurotypical in a neurodivergent household, weirdly, I found quite a few. For a start off, I feel genuinely lucky to be in this unique position. Like, as a self-identified neurotypical, I can obviously see the struggles that my kids are having, and I understand a whole world that so many neurotypicals don't see. and I have an insight into that world. And I've learned a lot about the challenges that they face and the lack of accommodations made for them. And in doing so, firstly, I can see just how fortunate I am that I don't face the same challenges. Like, I'm very grateful that I don't get overwhelmed by noise and that I can eat any food, you know, like, despite the fact it's weird, apparently. That's the thing that I appreciate. And, you know, like, I was in a coffee shop the other day and someone started a blender up from nowhere. And I remember being like a little bit irritated by it, but that was it.
Yeah.
Right. Now, if I was one of my kids, there would be like complete dysregulation. There'd be hands over the ears. There would be literally, Indy would run out of the shop. It would be, you know, and so I feel grateful that I don't have that level of overwhelm. I'm not on that kind of fine trigger. And that's just, you know, one example, I guess. like I'm fine in crowds, for example, and I love being sociable, and I never had a problem going to school. So I'm lucky, and I wouldn't understand, as most neurotypicals don't understand, I would have no awareness of how lucky I am to not have those challenges. So that's a weirdly privileged position to be in.
Yeah.
So, of course, it's only right that I make all of the accommodations that I can for them, knowing that. So I know I've moaned about, it feels a bit lonely.
Well, it's, you know, that would sound like a hippie. That's love, isn't it? You know, that's what love is. You know, we try and make our children's time as enjoyable and easy and seamless as it can be. You know, that's
and knowing how difficult they find things and seeing things from the other perspective as well. It's the least I can do is to make accommodations for them, because, you know, they're having to deal with so much more. They've got a much rougher hand to play than I have.
Well, I just think, thank God, parenting has evolved in this way. I mean, you know, if your children or my children were born 20, 30 years ago, you know, they could have ended up in mental health services, in prison, you know, I mean, because they just would have been shouted down or locked in a room or scolded or, you know, all of these, you know.
Absolutely.
It's a much better time, you know, much better time.
Yes. So I think, you know, sometimes when I find myself getting frustrated by being the lone neurotypical, it is helpful to just remind myself to check my neurotypical privilege.
Yes. Yeah.
Check my neurotypical privilege and go, you know what? Suck it up.
Yes.
Suck it up,
no,
big
I agree.
nose.
Yeah. Well, there's one big nosed person to another. Yeah.
Oh, you get it as well?
Yeah,
it's brutal. It's fucking brutal.
Yes.
Another positive of this situation is that being a neurotypical, I can advocate for them.
Yeah.
I can bridge that gap between them in the neurotypical world. I can be that interpreter. I don't get overwhelmed if I'm in a situation where someone's being an asshole and I need to, you know, to correct them.
Yeah.
Or if I'm in front of an authority figure or a professional that I need to kind of step up and advocate for them with, I can speak both neurotypical and neurodivergent. I'm bilingual.
Bilingual, yes.
So I feel like I'm in a better position to be able to educate people about how best to accommodate them, because I know all the rules them pesky normals live by. So I can help to sort of navigate them, I guess. So I can't imagine how hard it is for parents who are neurodivergent themselves. I would think that's probably the majority of parents that have spoken to me on Neuroshambles.
Yeah.
Are neurodivergent themselves in those neurodivergent households. And that must be so hard. Like, again, as an alleged neurotypical, I feel very fortunate that I'm not having that, because firstly you have to interpret a neurotypical situation.
You're already struggling in the first place.
Work out what's going on, and then, you know, that might be overwhelming or unfamiliar to you, and then you have to help your kids navigate that situation, and you have to put them first rather than you. And again, they're having to suck it up, but what they're having to suck up isn't mild irritation; it's complete overwhelm, and on some occasions, and it must be absolutely exhausting. So again, I feel, as a neurotypical in a neurodivergent household, I'm lucky.
Yeah.
The final positive, and I told you there was a list of them. For me, I genuinely believe that my neurodivergent family have made me a better person. Like, without question. I'm more patient as a human. I used to be quite short-tempered before kids. Not fighty, like I was an arsehole, but I'd be impatient with stuff. But I'm less judgmental, and it feels like I've been given this free pass to ignore social rules a little bit, because I see that some of them are sort of paper thin and don't actually make sense, or nothing actually happens if you don't adhere to them. So I feel like I'm sort of living a little bit on the outside of social conventions, and that's quite
Edgy.
freeing. It's liberating, isn't it? Do you not feel that sometimes? Like you're saying in a restaurant.
I do. It's like you're seeing different work, a different way of being, and it's liberating, I think, I agree.
I feel privileged to be able to do that.
Neurodiversity champions.
Okay, we're going to do some neurodiversity champions now. This is the section of the podcast where we look at any people or organisations who are doing amazing things in the world of championing neurodiversity. Do you have any neurodiversity champions for us, Kirsty?
My first one is our mutual friend.
Oh, Angela Barnes.
TV's Angela Barnes.
TV's Angela Barnes.
As we call her.
Okay. Yeah.
Who is one of my best friends, somebody who I deeply love, and somebody who really helped me understand how somebody can go misdiagnosed for years, and it helped inform my practice in working in mental health. Mm-hmm. So I've known Angela since she was about 15, and there were some things that she always found really challenging, and for years she was misdiagnosed as having depression or as having a personality disorder and bipolar disorder, and got put on loads of different medications, and it was just awful. I lived with her for many years, seeing her go through all of this stuff, finally to kind of, and me always, I worked in mental health. I was like, none of this fits. This doesn't fit. You haven't got a personality disorder. You haven't got any trauma, or this is all wrong, And then finally, when she sought out, a psychiatrist. She was a little bit older. We weren't living together anymore, and got this diagnosis. I was like, yes, that's what it is. Yeah. And then I think I started looking at my own patients in a slightly different light because of her experience, having seen her go through that. And gradually now, we are in this more kind of enlightened period in mental health services, and things are improving massively, where we're starting to realise that neurodivergency is a large part of people's complex diagnosis.
Yeah. And the great thing about Angela is that she's very vocal about it, and she talks about it on stage, and which is not an easy thing to do. As a comedian, probably less so now, I think, but as a comedian, when Angela probably first started talking about it, it was it's a vulnerable situation to put yourself in.
No, and that's the other reason why I just think she's been absolutely brilliant. She's used her position to talk about it in a really entertaining way, which engages people so that they listen, and really kind of understand, a real life perspective. It's so fantastic, really, so incredibly proud of her. And the other one is, it's funny because you mentioned the stimming pool. I listened to
Yeah.
So the Electric Palace Cinema in Hastings is an amazing independent cinema that runs neurodiversity film nights. And the guy that runs these nights, and he also runs a B-movie fan club, is actually in the stimming pool. He's one of the people in the stimming pool. Yeah. And the film, I didn't even realise, it was in the local magazine, that a lot of it was shot in Hastings and made by people in Hastings. And they actually showed it. They have a neurodiversity film festival over the last couple of days, and they showed it and had a Q&A. The stimming pool.
Yeah. So if any neuroshamblers haven't listened to the episode that mentioned the stimming pool, I think it was the last one. The stimming pool is a film that was mentioned in Neurodiversity Champions, which is made by a bunch of autistic directors, and it's fully neurodivergent creatives doing it, and it's a wonderful thing. So that's showing at the Electric Cinema.
My shout out is to the Electric Palace Cinema in Hastings for supporting neurodivergent filmmakers and neurodivergent film nights. And I didn't actually realise that the film had been made. I haven't seen it yet. I'm desperate to see it.
It's just come out. It came out on the 28th, I think. Awesome. Nice. I've got a neurodiversity champion, Lucy Bronze. Did you read about Lucy Bronze? England international footballer has come out as autistic ADHD.
Come out of the closet.
Yeah, basically as autistic ADHD. So she was diagnosed about 4 years ago and decided that she wanted to talk about being neurodivergent. And there was an interview with her with Alex Scott on the BBC Sport, which was just really insightful, and it was like quite a short one, but covered loads. And she talks about masking and stimming and pattern recognition and hyper focus and difficulties with eye contact. And it was just the way she talked about it was super positive, and the fact that she talked about it in such a positive way was really refreshing. And she's actually now going to be an ambassador for the National Autistic Society as well. So such a good role model, basically.
Yeah. When people rise up from those kind of platforms, that's when big change happens, because that's such a popular thing, isn't it, football? So when somebody kind of rises up from those kind of, sporting and the things that all neurotypical people like.
Yeah, so props to Lucy Bronze there as well.
Yeah.
Tiny epic wins.
Okay, we're going to do some tiny epic wins now. These are moments that in a neurotypical household, a fully neurotypical household, would not be any big deal, but in a neuroshambolic household are major wins. Do you have any tiny epic wins for us, Kirsty?
I do, yes. So on Mother's Day,
okay,
my youngest unexpectedly and randomly made me breakfast.
Amazing! Randomly made you breakfast. So, how random was the breakfast?
Well, it was a fried egg on one piece of toast and a kind of scrambled egg on the other piece of toast, and 6 pieces of banana down each side of the plate. And it was he just
and you weren't expecting it?
No, he just knocked on the door and walked in, and then brought me a cup of peppermint tea as well. One, I was a bit nervous about what the kitchen was going to look like. He's only 9, and also that he hadn't severely burned himself by boiling the because he'd got up early and done it with that, and I was still in bed, so he'd kind of walked in with these things. Going, God. But that was a real genuine huge win. And I do have one more actually.
Yeah, go for it.
My oldest said to me the other day that I was really patient with my youngest child, and I've never heard them say that before.
Wow, actually observed
me and said, God, you're really patient. You've got
I bet you
I've waited 17 years for that. To be seen.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
But isn't that like what we were talking about earlier about? It's like just having an appreciation of the accommodation. So maybe it is possible. Maybe there'll be a moment when they're older to go, actually, you do put a bit of a shift in.
Thank you. Yeah, you never know.
Finally. Yeah. I'll wait for that to emerge from any of my children. I had a bit of a tiny epic win recently, in that Jay broke a Lego house that India had spent ages making. Unclear whether it was on purpose, but almost certainly was. I think he was annoyed with her for some reason, so he decided to break it. And India found it and she lost it. She was completely situationally mute and couldn't voice her frustration. So I got her to type it out, and she wrote down he's broken my Lego house. That is the thing I spent the most amount of time on ever. So I spoke to Jay about it, and I used that, India's really upset that you've done this and she's really dysregulated now because that meant a lot to her. So it would really make things better if you could remember how it was built and put it back together again. And he stopped his video game and he went back and he rebuilt it brick by brick. Without complaint, not even moody about it. He was just kind of humming to himself as he was doing it. And he did that, gave it to India. She reset immediately, straight away. And then everything was right with the world and everyone went about their business. It's like, oh, wow, this must be what it's like in a neurotypical house sometimes. Conflict resolution can actually work. So that was a huge win, because that very rarely happens, that, that Jay will acknowledge that he's done something wrong and then make amends for it. It's a huge thing. So I was very happy about that.
What the flip?
Okay, what the flip moments. Now, these are the moments where your children will say or do something completely mystifying, and you just sort of end up shrugging and walking off. Do you have any what the flip moments for us, Kirsty?
I do. I have a lot of them with my youngest, but quite out of nowhere, about 4 days ago, said, fuck Donald Trump.
It's a good start.
Yeah, fuck Donald Trump, and then pause. Christopher Columbus is the worst human of all time. Number 2 is Hitler. Number 3 is Donald Trump.
Christopher Columbus, what, because he discovered America?
Oh, because of all the slavery stuff.
Oh, okay. So he's gone deeper than that.
Yeah, in his mind, Christopher Columbus is the worst human of all time because he is the reason that racism exists.
He's nice. He's ordered it as well.
Yeah.
Nice to see.
But that was out of nowhere. There wasn't any build up to it or connecting.
Nice. Fuck Donald Trump. I've got a what the flip moment from
Yeah.
Jay where he was, I don't believe that he was meaning to be hurtful. I'm not sure. I think it was just an idle observation, but it might not be true. I don't know. Have a listen and see what you think. He said, Daddy, why don't you iron your face? It might fix the wrinkles in it. And do you think he meant that to be a diss? It's unclear a lot of the time.
It would hurt, wouldn't it? You'd end up with the worst problem if you ironed.
It's true. It can't be an actual practical suggestion. No. He must know that, right? Yeah. In fact, he was just being a dick, wasn't he? Yeah.
He sounds. Well, maybe he'll be a stand-up comedian.
He was funny. The other what the flip moment from Jay, again, he's more of the just completely baffling. He went, my stomach is an ironclad waffle.
That doesn't even make any. Why is it a waffle? I understand the ironclad part, but I
was like, what does that even mean? And he said, I start off with a small stomach, but when I'm hungry, I can fit loads in it. Oh. I get his explanation of how his stomach feels, but how that is translated to being an ironclad waffle is anyone's guess. There's a lot of groundwork to do before you get to there.
Maybe did he not mean a waffle maker? Don't know.
Don't know. I really don't know. It's one of those ones. It's like I've asked a follow-up question.
Yeah.
I'm actually more baffled than I was before. Yeah. I'm done. No further questions. Let's just go on about our day. Okay, so that is it for this episode of Neuroshambles. Kirsty, thank you so much for coming and chatting to me about being the lone neurotypical in a sea of neurodivergency. So thank you for that. Thank you also to the listeners. As ever, I really appreciate your kind comments and your emails and all of the lovely things you're saying on the socials, and for spreading the word as well. So if you want to tell more people about Neuroshambles, that would be magical. If you want to put some reviews on your podcast platform of choice, that would also be greatly appreciated. But otherwise, just keep listening and keep enjoying, because it's nice to know that people are out there consuming this nonsense. If you want to catch up with us on the socials, we're on Facebook and Threads and Instagram and TikTok as well. So find us there. But all that remains for me to say now is have a nice life.